Today's lesson will be on adding and subtracting polynomials. The essential question for this lesson is, what is a polynomial and how do you add and subtract them? So let's start out by defining what exactly is a polynomial. A polynomial is a term or a finite sum of terms in the form ax to the n, where a is a real number, x is a variable, and the exponent n is a whole number. Some examples might be 12x to the 9th power, 3t minus 5, or 4m to the 3rd minus 5m squared plus 8. Some things to note are the fact that the exponents are all positive numbers, positive whole numbers, okay? They're never negative numbers, and they're never fractions or roots, okay? Another thing to know is, going back to our original example of ax to the n, a can be considered to be the coefficient, okay, of x to the n, sometimes called the numerical coefficient, but most often simply referred to as the coefficient. And the exponent n is the degree of the term, okay? Now, another thing to know is that a polynomial containing only one variable is considered to be a polynomial in that variable. In the example we used above, this one right here, this is a polynomial in M, okay? Also notice that it is written in descending powers of the variable, m to the 3rd, m to the 2nd. There is no m term, and then there's just the constant term. So it is always written in descending powers, okay? Another thing to know is that the 4m to the 3rd is considered the leading term of the polynomial, and its coefficient is the leading coefficient. So the leading coefficient for this particular polynomial is 4. And one last thing about this polynomial is that the degree of the polynomial is the greatest degree of all the terms. So in this case, the degree would be 3, okay? This is a 3rd degree polynomial because it's the highest valued exponent. Now, some polynomials have special names. For example, a single-term polynomial would be referred to as a monomial. A two-term polynomial would be referred to as a binomial, and a three-term polynomial would be referred to as a trinomial. So we have monomials, binomials, trinomials. If we have 4 or more terms, there's no special names given, but just be aware that there is no restriction to the number of terms a polynomial can have. So now let's say that we want to find the sum of two polynomials, or to put simply, we want to add two polynomials. Adding two polynomials involves simply combining like terms, okay? Now, what exactly do we mean by like terms? Only terms containing exactly the same variables raised to the same powers may be combined. This is what we mean by like terms. So let me repeat that. Only terms containing exactly the same variables raised to the same powers may be combined. This is what we mean by like terms. All right, let's look at an example here. We've got 3x to the 5th minus 9x to the 3rd plus 4x squared, that polynomial, plus minus 8 to the 5th plus 8x to the 3rd plus 2. Now, we have to look for terms containing exactly the same variable raised to the same power, okay? So let's start by looking at 3x to the 5th, okay? If we look, there is only one other x to the 5th term, and that's this minus x to the 5th. So those two are like terms. All right, now let's look at 9x to the third. There is only one other x to the third term, and that's over here, 8x to the third. Now let's look at 4x squared. There is no other 4x squared term, or x squared term rather. And then the last term is a constant term 2. That's the only constant term. So nothing happens to those particular terms. All we can do is add where we've got like terms. And if we add the like terms, our result is going to look like this. So end up with minus 5x to the fifth minus x to the third plus 4x squared plus 2. Notice again that we write this out with descending order of exponents. And now, although we added two trinomials, each of them had 3 terms, we end up, our result has 4 terms because of the fact that 4x squared and 2 had no corresponding like terms, so we couldn't do anything with those. So this is how we go about adding polynomials. So next, let's look at how we go about subtracting polynomials. To find the difference or to subtract two polynomials, all we do is add the first polynomial and the negative or opposite of the second polynomial, okay? So reality, subtracting polynomials, once we've changed all the signs of the second polynomial, it's just doing the same thing we did before in that we add. So we change the signs and then we add the two polynomials. So let's look at an example here. Let's say we've got the polynomial minus 6m squared minus 8m plus 5, and we're subtracting from that minus 5m squared plus 7m minus 8. Now the first thing we're going to do is go in and change the signs of the second polynomial, and then we will do it as an addition problem. So now we've got minus 6m squared minus 8m plus 5 plus 5m squared minus 7m plus 8, okay? So we're again going to look for like terms, and I notice I've got an m squared term here and an m squared term here. So those are like terms, I can add those. And I notice also that I've got just an m and another m here, so I can add those. And unlike our previous example, this has two constant terms. I've got a plus 5 here and a plus 8 here, so I can add those. And once I have combined all the like terms, my final answer becomes minus m squared minus 15m plus 13. So as you can see, subtracting polynomials, once you've changed the sign of the second polynomial, is the same as what we were doing when we were adding polynomials.